We hold these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal,
endowed by their creator
with certain unalienable rights.
That among these are life,
liberty, and the
pursuit
pursuit
of
of happiness.
I also wanted to get into the conversation of Black-owned businesses and how we have seen, lately with Starbucks and NASCAR coming out with saying how they support this movement, yet their past says otherwise. These corporations and these businesses, they know this, and now they're courting us in the movement through social media to capitalize on those dollars. And so how do we hold them accountable, dismantling racism within their own corporations? And how committed are we to actually supporting Black-owned businesses?
By simply saying, if my dollar is less valued, you'd rather have that person's dollar over mine simply because of the way I look, then you won't get it. Simple as that. And there's been protest after protest after protest showing that the only way that these big companies listen is if we take away their money. They only talk with money. So the only way to hold them accountable is to not keep giving them without can post all they want and say, yes, we're making all these changes. Yes, we stand with you. Yes, we're changing so and so. Yes, yes, yes. And we're still buying in because they're saying all these things and making all these promises. But at the end of the day, they're like, I just got your money and I'm not going to do nothing. If y'all going to keep doing that, then why do I even need to change it? So in order to hold them accountable and to force change, it's as simple as not supporting them. It's as simple as not going to the Starbucks because apparently Black Lives Matter is a wrong thing to say. Supporting that is wrong. It's all these other things. And that's why back to y'all saying that we don't care about the Wendy's. We don't care about the Target. Black lives can't get brought back. And until y'all understand that, we will put a dent in your pockets. And that it seems like as horrible as that is, like the only way for them to see that we matter is to take away our dollar. That's it. That's
absolutely. That. I mean, Gen Z makes up 27% of the U.S. population. Read Gen Z as anyone born after 1997, and we're in history. And by 2026, I mean Gen Z will have this country and the economy because of our collective spending power. And so I think that we do also need to always thought of Black-owned businesses or brown-owned businesses as less. That has always kind of been the stereotype or the thought that we have in the back of our heads when it comes to pouring into these businesses that are owned by Black and brown men and women. My question is also, how do we start groups about why do we look at Black-owned businesses like that? Why are we so afraid to give them our dollar?
I mean, for me, I don't know if anyone else wanted to speak, but capitalism has an element of white supremacy embedded within it. And there's no escaping that. Even within, I think, Black-owned businesses, like, you do have to acknowledge that capitalism was made to sustain those in power and those with privilege. And as of right now, who is that, right? Like, white, cisgender, heterosexual Christian men. And look at who are owning all of these like huge corporations. It's people who fit into those positions of power. And so I would say that when people see a person running a Black-owned business, we've been conditioned subconsciously, though, because I know a lot of Black capitalists, unfortunately, we've been conditioned to view success and, like money and like power and all of that as whiteness. And that's because, at the end of the day, they aren't really, when we think about transforming the society, we do have to think about transforming capitalism and like, what does that look like, right? I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too into it because I know it's kind of controversial for folks. I don't know who in here like agrees with that. But yeah, I just do want to say that there is power in spending with the Black community and with by like owned stores. And also I think the narrative that like the looters, they're tearing down these like Black and brown businesses and they're burning them. Number one, like a very, very, very small percentage of what's happening. I think the media has done a bad job of portraying just how strategic protesters are being when it comes to where the locations are, where they are marching towards and to. I know in Los Angeles, we've been very conscious of where are these rich, successful areas where people have all of these great things that they get to tune out really happening to our communities. And so the looting and the rioting and the burning all the stores, that's happening to white people. And that's where the outcry is. And so I think like by choosing to focus on Black and brown stores being like burned down and all that stuff, ultimately, like they are acknowledging the power that is behind Black and brown owned businesses and queer owned businesses as well. I think we haven't like touched on that as much, but there is a power behind that. And so at the end of the day, I think we kind of have to like kind of get into the nuances of our economy and kind of talk about like how easy is it for folks to start their own business. I think it's Jeff Bezos. Everyone's like, he started from scratch. His parents invested like hundreds of thousands of dollars into his company. Like who can afford to do that in our communities? So yeah, there's like all these different factors that go into what success looks like when it comes to business.
I just want to touch in like a little bit on that. I'm so glad that you like started that conversation, Thandiwe. Like, you know, there's this narrative, you know, Black capitalism is like liberation for Black people, and that is completely wrong. And we see that in spaces like, you know, Atlanta, where looting and rioting is going to predominantly Black area. And like, obviously, the people in Atlanta don't feel that way about like Black owned businesses and Black capitalism. And then also with these BIPOC businesses, or let's say, you know, you got to address anti-Blackness within these Asian-owned and brown-owned businesses as well. You know, I've been followed in stores that have been Asian-owned in Crenshaw. So, you know, we have to address those experiences and dismantle that. And also, if you're thinking about like Black women in like corporate America and their pet to threat phenomenon, in which, you know, they start off you know, being the diversity hire, and, you know, they're all good until they start excelling in their position, then that's when they become a threat. And then their position, you know, is terminated. So we have to address a lot of things when it comes to, you know, supporting these businesses and like capitalism as a whole, because it is an issue. It's a racial issue as well. And yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, everything that you, Sarah, and Thandiwe said was on point. And so I think that these are, you know, the last questions, but Nate, Sarah, and Thandiwe, what are the next steps? And also Naomi, what are the next steps?
Sure. So this year I've been able to serve on my school board, and one thing that I've seen actually recently, you know, one thing that's been surprising to me is that recently, so probably 2 weeks ago, I brought forward a resolution that would scale back our police program in our schools. And what was so interesting to me was that I was completely calling on, in the resolution, calling on our council members to scale it. The people who serve on the board with me would not allow me to add in that language because they believe in processes. They believe in lip service before action. They believe in tabling things before. I mean, they just love to tweet and talk instead of actually getting things done. I mean, I've been fed up when I saw that. And I think the next steps from here would probably simply be, first off, November 6th. Don't forget about that. That should be a date that you treat as your birthday, honestly. I think next step after this, not only, don't finish the protests and all of that. I think one thing that I saw was that probably resembled the whole importance of what we're doing out on these streets is, and I don't know, when they put him, in that crowd, and they were basically saying, are you going to defund the police? And you have to basically put your elected folks on trial like that. They are the ones that are changing these things. Next steps is simply just doing exactly what they did to Jacob Frey, to your council member, to county executive, your mayor. Those people are going to change the community and make sure that they don't have lip service, but they have action. They put it into resolutions. They put it into action items. These folks that say they're happy to collect data, those are the institutionalists. Those are the folks that don't want to see this system change from inside out. Honestly, that's the stuff that's been blowing me throughout this whole year. I'm 18 years old, and I've only seen pushback. I've seen more data and more collection of data than things actually getting done. When I was 2 weeks ago, when I was doing that resolution on the whole policing thing, tell the people who I serve with saying that, I've seen the ratio between the presentations of data that we get at the table and the things that we actually vote on is insane. Some of these elected officials also, they're also for the good things. They're in it for the change. But the staff members, the system itself, these are the people who love things the way that they exactly are. And I think you have to break down this. Are you talking about a corporation, their HR system? Are you talking about a public, a health system? Are you talking about an education system? Break down piece by piece. How are they treating their Black workers? How are they treating their employees that are Black? How are they having fair and equitable policies? You have to tear the system piece by piece and put that into action item. If these folks won't draft up resolutions at the table themselves, tell them if they don't, then not only will you vote them out, but you'll tell the next person to do it, and you will bring forward the language that they are so willing or so unwilling to bring forward for them. There's no excuse for these, and so let's make them get these things done. So I think that's the next step. Just, take apart the system, figure out what are the nitty-gritty things that are oppressing Black people, people of color, non-English speaking people, where the support's provided, where they truly provided, and how are you truly making responsible for their actions? They say that they serve us, but they really don't. They serve themselves. Just like board members on a corporation or a CEO, they respond to their shareholders. Elected officials say that they respond to their voters, but because of Citizens United and all this, they're responding to the people with the big banks and the big bucks. So they don't care about us. But make them understand that our vote is more important than their dollar.
Yeah, for sure. Naomi, Sarah, Thandiwe.
I don't have anything to say. Nate said that absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. I think, I guess on a micro level, it would be to center conversations around not only Black liberation, but Black women liberation, just because I believe that Black women, when we see, throughout generations, throughout the decades, throughout American history, have always thought of everybody else. And that has been a continuing factor in history repeatedly, over and over again. And realizing that intersectionality affects us all. And even with the language we use, I'm moving into the language we use, crime, why isn't it harm? Punishment, why isn't it accountability? Moving towards, divestment and investment, having these conversations, that is always a start, talking to people in our own community. I'm big on connecting with people, I'm not gonna walk up to the homegirl, go words, because that she's not gonna get that. She's probably not gonna even care about that, what I'm talking about. You have to relate to people in the sense, get them thinking what you're thinking, because that it affects them in the long run. basically community outreach. So yeah, I think those are like the first baby little steps. Get them to, you know, go on these campaigns, support them on your platforms, on other platforms, give Black women platforms, give Black women money, you know? So yeah, it starts right there, and you know, it's always gradual. We're leading towards something great.
Yeah, 100%. Thandiwe, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think was said beautifully, perfectly. Along the lines of what Sarah was saying, we really have to start, I think, moving towards radical thought and radical imagination. Now for reform, now is not the time to, you know, dance around a cute little, quick, easy Band-Aid fix to a system and a problem that was broken, shattered to begin with. You know, this is, I hate when people say this, but it is a historical moment. And, you know, you can be the person who is talking about if we give police more body cams, or if we, you know, add one mental health professional with a gun. No, right? Like, now is the time to really dig deep into all of those ideas and topics that taboo maybe 5 years ago, up until this year, actually. I don't know, it was very close between this call and this other thing, but No Name and Boots Riley had a very amazing conversation at 2:00 today, talking about Black Marxism and all of these like radical, just like radical thought and radical imagination, and just how important it is for us to really push the limits of what we can do and what we are prepared to do for the liberation of our folks. And so I think if everyone becomes comfortable with being uncomfortable, I guess, then we have a good fighting chance of creating real societal change. And so you can start there, read some actual books if you can get your hands on them. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything that you all said was on point, and so this is.
You help us, we help them. Compassion is ingrained in love. That's the answer, but we answer to the opposite direction of the cause. Black bodies, they don't care. You see me unaware of what's on my mind. Black bodies, oh, I need you to see me, yeah. I got some good change in my heart. That's where change gotta start. That's where change gotta start.